Hey y'all, welcome back to Exile Wargaming, where today, and as always, we're going to be talking about Harlequins and a battle report against the new Thousand Sons in the Grand Coven detachment. Now, the list we're running today should look a bit familiar. This is the same exact list we ran against Death Guard, and the original plan for this list was to just try and explore a few different options we may want to add to our Harlequin army. Unfortunately, the results were pretty spectacular, and I'm not quite sold on what we should change just yet. We have a Troop Master with Chegarax Coil attached to a big brick of 11 troops, a Shadow Seer with the Mistweave attached to another unit of 11-man troops. We have two Troop Masters attached to 5-man units inside of 2 Star Weavers, and a Solitaire to round out the Harlequin side of things. Beyond this, we're going to try and match the core foundation of your typical Aeldari Warhost list. We have Fugan and 2 units of Fire Dragons. Both will be inside of a Wave Serpent. We have an Autarch with Howling Banshees getting Advance in Charge, auto flips on their Melta Rifle, and then 2 units of Corsair Void Reavers and a unit of 5 Rangers to kind of screen the board, pick up some early objectives, and just be sort of a nuisance our opponent has to deal with. We are coming in at only 14 total units, the way we're running it today, at 1,990 points. While we are short on units, we are heavy in lethality and speed. Now, our opponent is bringing the new Thousand Sons in the Grand Coven detachment, which I believe is similar to what they were running in the Index. They have Magnus the Red, an Exalted Sorcerer on disc with Incendium, an Infernal Master with Eldritch Vortex, a Sorcerer with Umberlific Crystal, and 2 more Sorcerers. Now, the Infernal Master and the Sorcerers will all be attached to a 5-man unit of Rubric Marines. They have 2 10-man units of Zangors, 3 units of 3 Zangor Enlightened with Great Bows, 2 Mutalith Vortex Beasts, and a Chaos Rhino. They are coming in at 14 total units at 1,990 points. Now, we'll be playing Mission E, which is Taken Hold in Hammer and Anvil style deployment on GW Terrain Layout 8. Now, getting into deployment, we want to make sure that we're maximizing our ability to get on objectives and engage our opponent as quickly as possible. So we have a Star Weaver with the Troop Master up top here, and then we have the big brick with Chegarax Coil right behind this ruin at the top over here. We have a unit of Corsair Void Reavers to scout either up towards the midboard or push back and screen this section of the board. We have a unit of Rangers screening out our home field objective, and a Solitaire and the Wave Serpent in the center. This is 2-inch terrain. We can run right over it with the Wave Serpent. If we get the opportunity, we can use those Star Engines and get the Wave Serpent all the way up into our opponent's face early on, deploy the Fire Dragons, and start laying waste to whatever we feel like if our opponent gives us that opportunity. Now, we also have a unit of Corsair Void Reavers down here that can either scout up and hold this objective or push back here afterwards with that 7-inch scout move, and a Star Weaver with the Troop Master beyond this. Holding this middle objective down at the bottom is the Shadow Seer brick with the Mistweave. What this does is it allows us to collapse on both sections of the board if we want to pursue some form of alpha strike. Now, our opponent has pretty much screened themselves off with a ton of trash. There's a unit of Zangors up here, Enlightened over here. They also get a reactive move if you get too close. A Rhino with the Infernal Master and a Sorcerer, and 2 units of Rubric Marines in the center. And then 2 more units of Zangor Enlightened over here. The Mutalith Vortex Beasts are pretty much positioned to just push out and grab angles on the midboard or back up some of these objectives. And then there's a unit of Rubric Marines back behind this rune here, and another one up top here. Magnus being in the front with a unit of Zangors and the ability to kind of block all of this off in the early game so that he doesn't get beat up by Fire Dragons too bad too early on. Something really unique about this scenario is our opponent has a ton of trash. There are a lot of units to chew through before we would get into something like their Rubric Marines, which are absolutely devastating if they are able to get in contact with us. But we also have that ability, being a Ghost of the Webway detachment, of charging through enemy models. So if he is positioning these Rubric Marines a little too close to the Zangors or anything else, we may still be able to get in combat later on. Now, unfortunately, our opponent wins the turn one dice roll and gets to go first. I've been really enjoying going first with an army like this. Our speed and lethality is just second to none, I truly believe. But our opponent ends up pushing up a couple units and staging for a clapback on the following turn. The Zangor up top here come into this rune, backed up by the Mutalith Vortex Beast, and another unit of Rubric Marines with a Sorcerer down low. If we choose to engage or interact with them on this objective, whatever's standing there afterwards will very easily be wiped out. So this isn't too bad of a play by our opponent. They did draw Assassination and extend battle lines, so you want to make sure that he's on some objective early on and has the ability to continually contest us throughout the game. Our opponent has a ton of units to do this, and being frank, it doesn't matter if you are shooting a bow or a bolter or a flamer or a melt-a-gun into Harlequins. They fall pretty similarly to all of them. So everything that he has can trade very, very well into us. Something I really like that he did here is he pushed up these Zangors into the mid board to block our path into our opponent's section of the board with the Wave Serpent early on. I believe that's why he was holding this objective here. The other Zangors are going to stay put, and then he staged a unit of Rubric Marines and this Mutalith Vortex Beast down here in order to overwatch a couple threats if they want to start pushing this section of the board. We will lose this game, I believe, because we are matching our opponent unit for unit if we walk into one or two overwatches throughout the course of this. So we really want to mitigate our losses during our turn if we have that opportunity. Getting into our turn one, we draw Tempting Target and Cleanse. Our opponent selects the center objective as the tempting target, and we pretty much just say it's now or never. We're kind of stress testing this list, and I want to see how much we can do if we just engage everything we possibly can early on. So we start throwing out our movement tokens and get everyone into position. This unit of Harlequin troops up here inside of the Starweaver get out and move up towards this section of the board. We use the +2 move on the big Troop Master brick with Chegarax Coil. The Wave Serpent's going to push up and disembark Fuegan and the Fire Dragons, and we're going to blitz the Solitaire over here as well. We want to get a couple angles. I believe some of these Fire Dragons are able to see this Rhino, especially with some extended range, and a few others are able to get into this Mutalith Vortex Beast. We were not originally anticipating this, but after we kind of saw where our movement was and how everything was going to happen, I thought it'd be a solid idea to just advance the unit of Howling Banshees up. If we make a charge into something here, we consolidate afterwards. We may be able to tie up an extra unit that we weren't really accounting for. And then we use our No Overwatch token to bring up the Shadow Seer brick right here. This was supposed to be an 8-inch charge into our opponent's Mutalith, and then we should have been able to consolidate into the Rubric Marines, but we'll see exactly how that goes. And then our unit of troops that was inside of the Starweaver over here is going to push up and just hold this wall on this section of the board. The Corsair Void Reavers are going to hold this section of the board, and the Starweaver is going to come up here by itself. We wanted to make sure that we were screening the board from Umbralific Crystal. We don't want our opponent to pull one of his units out, deep strike on our home objective, while the rest of our force is all the way in his backfield later on. That seems like a nightmare scenario for us. I think one Rubric Marine squad with a Sorcerer will be able to bring down all of the Rangers and the Corsairs, and most likely, you know, a Starweaver beyond this. So we wanted to make sure we were screening the board. I don't believe this was the most efficient way, but hey, we got to do what we got to do when we have the opportunity. In the shooting phase, we pretty much get to work. This unit of Fire Dragons ended up splitting fire into this Rhino. We are able to bring that down. He loses one of the Rubric Marines out of one of the squads and one out of the other. I believe it may have just taken one wound, however. The Wave Serpent is going to put some shots into, I believe, the Rhino as well, and then the Shuriken Cannons into the Enlightened, and then this Starweaver is going to wipe out the Enlightened afterwards. This unit of Harlequin troops down here with the Shadow Seer put some shots into the Enlightened. We just failed to wound everything. Go figure, they're not infantry. Those neural pistols aren't great. And fusion pistols only have 6-inch range. So we were able to wipe out this unit of Enlightened. We brought the Mutalith Vortex Beast down to just 2 wounds remaining. We popped a Rhino and battle shocked all of the troops inside afterwards. But the charge phase is when we really start to make things happen. Unfortunately for us, even with a command point, we failed the charge with the Shadow Seer brick twice, so they're going to be stranded out here. What a waste of almost 300 points. We do end up moving one of our units of Harlequin troops, the 5-man with the Troop Master, all the way towards this section of the board, and we are able to pile in and touch the Mutalith Vortex Beast. The big unit of Harlequin troops afterwards gets into all of the Zangor Enlightened, and then the Solitaire gets into combat with one of these Rubric Marine squads. Beyond this, the Banshees tag the unit of Zangor Enlightened. Even though they use their reactive moves, I believe they flubbed. I think one got 1 inch and the other got 2 or 3 inches off of this wall. It was a pretty easy charge. And if we could bring these down, we can start consolidating into a few of our other opponent's units from here. Something that we ended up doing here is because we tagged the Vortex Beast and we have Chegarak's Coil, we move in, we end up doing 5 or 6 mortal wounds to the Zangors, we put some hits onto the Mutalith Vortex Beast, and the rest of the unit wipes out this squad over here. We are then able to consolidate with this entire troop brick all the way into the Vortex Beast as well, and then could potentially try and tag the Rubric Marines beyond this wall. In the fight phase, though, the Solitaire goes absolutely bananas and wipes out the entire unit of Rubric Marines and the Sorcerer, which I believe was the Infernal Master, in one go. I think we wounded, or we hit 12 times. We ended up wounding 9 or 10 times, and our opponent just could not pass the saves. We were not anticipating this, but it was pretty nice to see from here. And then this unit of Howling Banshees was able to bring down the Zangor Enlightened as well. So at the end of it all, we were able to bring down the Mutalith Vortex Beast. We tagged this unit of Rubric Marines behind this wall with both of our units of Harlequin troops. The Solitaire ends up consolidating into this other unit of Rubric Marines, and then through some cheeky positioning, we ended up pushing one of these Banshees over here to get into base-to-base contact with the Zangor, and we were able to then push in the Autarch to tag this unit as well. Unfortunately for us, that Sorcerer hits pretty hard and was able to drop the Solitaire, so we did have to use our Resurrect strat to bring him back at the end of the turn. But this was a phenomenal turn for us. We brought down a Rhino, a unit of Rubric Marines, and an Infernal Master, 2 units of Zangor Enlightened, a Mutalith Vortex Beast, and another unit of Zangor up top here, while also tagging 2 more units of Rubric Marines. We have either destroyed or tied up over 1,000 points of our opponent's army. So even with that, we got to see how absolutely devastating Thousand Sons could be, especially to a fragile army like ours. He scores 5 points in primary for holding his home field objective, and then draws overwhelming force and secure no man's land. Now, fortunately for us, he may not get that secure no man's land, but he will be able to score 5 points on overwhelming force. What ended up happening over here is he fell back with a unit of Rubric Marines up top, dropped down the Exalted Sorcerer on disc, double Doom bolted this unit of Harlequin troops with a little bit of ancillary firepower, and was able to bring down all of them except for the Troop Master at just 2 wounds remaining. Magnus pushes up, looking like he's going to start taking the mid board, and then the Rubric Marines right here stay in combat with the Autarch, and this unit of Zangor Enlightened just pushes back over here. Our unit of Rubric Marines down here and the Mutalith Vortex Beast move up. We use the reactive move, which was really stupid by us, to push this unit of Harlequin troops back. It ended up putting them on an objective, and it did give them overwhelming force. Just wasn't thinking. What I didn't want to do for our opponent is give them a really easy charge to finish off the unit afterwards, but it didn't matter because these Rubric Marines completely wiped this entire squad. The damage that was coming out of these units was devastating. Our opponent had less than 1,000 points to work with and destroyed both of our big units of troops, knocked out a Fire Dragon, and put us in a really awkward position for a follow-up attack. In the charge phase, our opponent pretty much pushes up everything as far as they can go. He attempted to charge with the Mutalith Vortex Beast into the Banshees and missed it. This unit of Zangors ends up charging both our Harlequin troop unit and the Troop Master. They're able to bring down the Troop Master. We have to utilize the Resurrect strat, and we're only able to bring down one Harlequin troop out of this other unit. That -1 to hit is pretty solid, and in return, we bring down 6 of the Zangor, so we did some pretty good work there. We also were able to bring down the Exalted Sorcerer on disc. I believe he failed one of his packs earlier on and took a wound. Magnus is going to push forward. He wipes out all of the Fire Dragons and brings Fugan down to just 1 wound remaining. I think we get a couple wounds knocked off of him as well. I think it was just 3. The Shadow Seer and the Autarch are able to bring down the unit of Rubric Marines in the center, the Solitaire, but that Sorcerer again just has the Solitaire's number and very handily brings him down again. So we are out the Solitaire for this game, and this unit is tied up with the Sorcerer. Now, hard to believe this is only our turn 2, but we're still getting after it. We end up scoring 15 points in primary and draw Assassination and Storm Hostile Objective. We should be able to get both of these. We have not used a bunch of CP through this point in the game, and we are in really, really great shape. We use a fallback, shoot, and charge strat on the Harlequin troops that were tied up with the Zangor up here. The Troop Master pushes up right here as well, so we can get a charge into these Rubric Marines, maybe consolidate into the Exalted Sorcerer over here afterwards. The Banshees and the Autarch consolidate onto our opponent's home field objective at the end of last turn, so we are going to take that from him if he doesn't make something change. And our unit of Harlequin troops down here pushes out towards this Mutalith Vortex Beast using the No Overwatch token with the Rubric Marines down here as well. The Corsair Voidweavers get a big advance, and they're just going to hold this objective afterwards. We're going to try to get some extra firepower now that we've removed the unit with Umbralific Crystal, or it's at least tied up, and push this Star Weaver up to put some extra shots into whatever we may need to afterwards. This Wave Serpent disembarks the Fire Dragons, and Fugan is still locked in combat with Magnus. Now, these Fire Dragons and the Wave Serpent, everything up here is able to bring Magnus down to 5 wounds remaining. This was really nice for us. Unfortunately, we don't have a bunch of Harlequin troops to drop the last 5 mortal wounds on him, but we'll see where it takes us in that phase. And we are able to drop the Zangors that we fell back from up top here afterwards. In the charge phase, we just try to put our opponent away. Both of the units of troops, or the Troop Master and a unit of troops with a Troop Master, make combat with the Rubric Marines up top. We were able to get a kind of a perfect line with this Troop Master over here and then come in and touch the Exalted Sorcerer afterwards. So all of this is tagged or wiped out over here. The Troop Masters are so ridiculously good into Rubric Marines and Sorcerers. It's kind of out of this world. The Howling Banshees and the Autarch are able to bring down the Sorcerer over here. Magnus and Fugan get to work in the center, and then we are able to bring down the Mutalith Vortex Beast and tag this unit of Rubric Marines afterwards. Now, we brought down the Mutalith to, I believe, 5 wounds or so in the shooting phase with Fusion Pistol and grenades, but we're going to see where it takes us from here. Now, Fugan and Magnus end up bouncing off of each other for the remainder of this turn, and they're going to go into combat through the next. In our opponent's turn 3, they score 0 points on primary and draw behind enemy lines and establish locus. Magnus gets to work, wipes out the Fire Dragons over here, tries to put some shots into the Wave Serpent, and nothing happens on that section of the board. These Rubric Marines are stuck in combat with our troops, and then the Zangor Enlightened end up being stuck in combat as well with the Autarch and the Banshees, who just moved into them at the end of last combat phase. In the charge phase, he is able to bring down Fugan this time, and we do get the Resurrect afterwards. The unit of Rubric Marines down here does eventually fall to our Harlequin troop with their sorcerer, and we're in really, really great shape. Something bizarre about this is these Banshees and the Autarch were not able to bring down all of the Zangor Enlightened, which is kind of wild. But we score another 15 in our turn 3 and just close out the game. We move this unit of troops out to get into combat with Magnus for the remaining 2 wounds, but Fugan gets to take the shot and makes it happen before we could. Everything else just kind of positions on the board to max our score afterwards. So we run away the victor 97-24 in a commanding lead. I believe the only reason we didn't walk out with a 100 is because we drew Marked for Death and Overwhelming Force in our turn 4, and unfortunately our opponent didn't have any units left on the board. The decider in this game was absolutely speed and aggression. I think early turn overwhelm is a really viable strategy if you have the ability to put some damage in and make sure that you control the pace of the game. I do not believe that playing the slow, cagey game against Thousand Sons is going to fall in our favor, especially if we're playing a game where we're matching them unit count for unit count. Double Doombolt is a real threat. The Sorcerer on disc is pretty solid. Deep Strike possibilities with Umberlific Crystal and just really efficient Overwatch will allow them to gain way too much value. At any point in this game, if our opponent had utilized Overwatch well or was able to just steal a unit or two away from us, it would have been entirely different. They have way too many cheap resources in Zangor and Zangor Enlightened. The Mutalith Vortex Beast, while he's awesome, is actually pretty cheap. That trade really well in that early game, contesting objectives. I think the longer we wait, the more damage we're going to end up taking later on in the game. So to put this in perspective, we ended the game with kind of a ragtag force. Anything that looked at them would have killed them at any point in time. We destroyed upwards of 1,000+ points of our opponent's army on turn 1, and this is what they were able to do in just a single turn of retaliation afterwards. They killed 2 units of fire dragons. They killed Fugan, who resurrected. They killed the Solitaire twice, 2 big bricks of troops and their characters. They were also able to almost bring down this unit of Howling Banshees with the Autarch. If we would have put ourselves in a position where those Rubric Marines got to activate just a couple times like they did down here, we would have been in some really, really bad shape. One of the reasons I wanted to push early on is because our opponent hadn't set up for a really good Overwatch and follow-up. All of the Rubric Marines were either behind cover, over here, or they were inside of the Rhino. If our opponent had the ability to deal with us with those specific units, I think we just walk away the loser in this game, especially if we were playing a little bit more cagey throughout the course of it. The amount of damage Thousand Sons can put out is truly incredible. They wiped out almost our entire force inside of a turn. They wiped out almost 1,000 points in our units with just 1,000 points of theirs inside of basically a turn and a half. But on the flip side, I do think that our profiles fit perfectly into this style of army. Marine bodies, some simple trash to break through, and a couple heavy hitters like the Mutalith Vortex Beast and Magnus the Red. It allows our fire dragons to gain a pretty hefty amount of value. That 6-inch pile and consolidate felt great. It allowed us to tag multiple units without our opponent having the ability to fall back, shoot, and charge. And it allowed us to skirt a good bit of Overwatch as well while stealing some movement. The Solitaire and the Troop Masters overall are just devastating into Rubric Marines, and they gain so much extra value off of stage death. It's like we increased our unit count from 14 to 17 when you factor in Fugan being able to resurrect as well. Over the course of this game, we brought back the Solitaire and we brought back the Troop Master, and they were able to just kind of run wild. They're all hitting on 2s, they're wounding on 2s or 3s, they're -2 AP with 2 damage. That is the perfect profile into something like an expensive squad of rubrics with a sorcerer, all coming from something like an 85-point guy, just kind of running around by himself. So we do have great profiles into them. I think we have a pretty solid matchup into Thousand Sons as long as we have the right game plan. I think we have a horrible matchup into them if we're playing a little too cagey or we get a little too cute or afraid. I think this is one of those armies where you essentially just have to stage and hope that you make a couple charges in the first turn, get yourself within 6-7 inches, keep a CP in order to reroll a big impactful charge and really take advantage of that 6-inch pile in and consolidate with the troop masters as well. If you can do that, if you can tag a good portion of your opponent's force, I think we can just run away the victor in most of these layouts. This was Hammer and Anvil. If this was Search and Destroy, I think we have an even better matchup. I think there are some other terrain layouts that may not be as great for us, but I think there are some others that may be even better. But overall, I think Thousand Sons are an absolute incredible army. They can do damage to any target, but they will just struggle if their units can't contribute in the shooting phase. But guys, I hope you enjoyed. I know this was a short one, but that just seems to be the name of the game with this new list. I may be putting out a video here soon, kind of comparing how Warhost operates versus the same type of game plan in the Ghost of the Webway detachment. We are essentially swapping out units like Swooping Hawks and Warp Spiders for troops and big troop bricks to get that damage done as well. But I think the game plan is pretty similar. If you are finding success with Warhost and you have a bunch of Harlequins on the shelf, I definitely would recommend putting this on the table and seeing how it works for you. It's a great way to utilize the units that you really love without necessarily caving to the new hyper competitive meta that we need to in order to be competitive. But I really appreciate you. Thanks again. Please like, share, subscribe, join the Discord. It always helps any little bit, and I'll see you all in the next video.